we're here to talk about community, and it's kind of through the community, some of our shared connections that, you know, we got introduced, and I think that's the beauty of what we're trying to do here. And, you know, a bit of a selfish intro, really. You know, I think today is the, I guess, soft launch of our new brand, which is Kyn. Many of you guys might know me and the brand as media marketing. But in line with what we want to do as a business and where we think the industry's going, we want to focus really at the heart of community. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I think, you know, as things are changing more than ever, really, the desire for CPG leaders like yourself to interact, to learn, to question has become more and more prevalent. But yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about kind of, you know, your experiences and feel for that, yeah.
Well, it's something that I've always done. Thank you for having me, firstly. Yeah, I mean, I guess, so in 2015, I moved to work for Kellogg's. I was 25, showing my age directly. And kind of working for big brands, you do get invited a lot to join communities, conferences. Let's say conferences, I won't keep saying communities as well. And I, you know, threw my hat in the ring, and I think very early on recognized the value that comes from it. I think for a couple of reasons. Firstly, from a personal perspective, particularly when you're a little younger, it can be really important to build, they can be very valuable in building confidence. So, you know, there's a lot of talk, and it's well documented, the imposter syndrome. I think especially when you're that age and you move into a big company or you're moving out of university, you can be surrounded by very, very talented, experienced people within the business, and there are moments of thinking, you know, what the hell am I doing here? And meeting like-minded individuals and stepping outside of your four walls, firstly allows you, I mean, particularly if you've got a role in the community for speaking and presenting your work, you think very differently about the narrative regarding your projects. For an external world, you strip out the internal language and acronyms, and you think about the value from a holistic perspective as opposed to the very kind of nuanced internal ways of thinking. And then telling that story externally about the work that you're doing and receiving the validation, even if it's just somebody coming up to you afterwards for 2 minutes and saying, really liked what you talked about, we're doing something very similar, maybe even in some cases, you know, you're ahead of us in terms of what we're doing. It's great for confidence. You know, it gives you personal confidence in the way that you present yourself and you talk about your work. But it's, yeah, it's also the professional confidence, and it's the validation of the work that you're doing internally as well. And I think that's, you know, a little bit later on in my career now, where I am more confident generally of the work that I'm doing. I think the validation is the second point that I would really flag. You know, again, particularly in the space of AI, I always say there is no blueprint for a lot of the stuff that we're building in my role for content transformation in the DCOM space all over the business. You know, I think 5 minutes on LinkedIn will show you hundreds of opinions on, you know, this is the direction of travel, this is the solution to all of the AI questions that we have. And you know, there is no solution. It's constantly changing, it's evolving every day. And when you're trying to shape the future, and you're doing that in the internal kind of structure and the legacy and the culture of a business, you can end up driving yourself crazy sometimes if you're hitting a brick wall of certain messages that you're trying to land. Is this a problem that we have in our business, or is this a challenge that all businesses of similar sizes on a similar stage of their journey are having? Stepping outside of the four walls and having those open conversations give you the kind of conviction and, again, the confidence to go back into the business. And if it is a problem with your organization, you can confidently say that. I've heard that X company who are doing something similar have managed to solve this problem we don't think is feasible. Or, guys, you know, let's take a moment to accept that we're trying to solve the world and nobody has cracked this piece yet. And if you can balance the two pieces, what's an us problem versus what's an industry problem, allows you to prioritize, gives your whole team confidence internally, your narrative becomes stronger, and you generally do better work, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting what you just said there about, you know, the lack of a blueprint for a lot of the stuff that's happening at the minute. Pretty sure verbatim we just said that with Melda from Magnum before, and I think I said the same thing. I think that you see a lot of this on LinkedIn, you know, and it's quite spammy, and for me it's a bit BS if anyone is saying there's a a blueprint for AI rollout or agentic AI. And I think what we've seen, a lot of feedback we've had in the last 12 months around why people want to come to these kind of events. And obviously, I think, for the audience that aren't here today, the kind of inception behind the Candid Commerce event program was to have a much more transparent Chatham House rules style, that allows that level of interactivity that can either, kind of prove, disprove theories, give that validation, and add a bit more to the part, I think, particularly with AI, when we're so far away from a blueprint. I think it's a great opportunity for different brands in a non-compete format to have that kind of, mutual conversation,
Yeah, completely agree. I'd even go as far as to say with AI that I don't know if there ever will really be a blueprint. I mean, with the solutions that we're building internally, there are changes on it on a weekly basis. Even the solution owners don't know what Google or Adobe or OpenAI, which rabbit they're going to pull out of the hat next.
Yeah.
And then within 5 days, we have access to this new capability, and we have to completely reshape our ambitions, normally expand our ambitions, because something that's come out that was unforeseen has dramatically increased the range of work that we can do and the value that we can deliver back into the business. And I think our industry of digital marketing broadly, and in the CPG space especially, I think leadership across the space probably feels uncomfortable with not being able to predict out ahead the next 18 months. This is when this is going to happen, this is going to be our roadmap. But I think the people working on building the solutions almost accepting that that it is going to be a turbulent journey, and things are going to happen and nobody can predict what's going to happen literally, like I say, within a month's time. The acceptance of that is the first step to beating it, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see that acceptance grow, but I know that doesn't sell, particularly for vendors and partners to come to clients and openly hold their hands up and say, we don't know where this is going, but we'll steer you every step of the way. I think they'd worry about that kind of diluting their proposition if they're on a new business pitch. But it's the reality, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, you were showing us an example a few weeks ago in the office with the, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Nano Banana?
Nano Banana, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And
other models are available.
Yeah. And well, it was just interesting to see kind of, the turnaround time and then impact of some of this stuff. And that's the thing, isn't it? How do you kind of plan for, how do you predict that? And I imagine, in a massive organization like yours, it is driving a new age of kind of nimbility and agility. Is that what you're seeing at the minute?
It is, yeah. I think, we do consider that where we're at with content transformation and the implementation of AI into our end-to-end content transformation is, in many respects, industry leading, particularly from an efficiency driving piece. I think effectiveness is maybe an area that we should focus more on as a business when it comes to AI implementation. We've got a good 18 months of solid learning, scaled use cases across the business, and BAU application of the solutions now over such a long period of time, which is great. And it's given us a lot more, again, conviction and understanding of the reality of bringing this stuff to life. It's something that I talk a lot about with external audiences, again, because I was at an event not linked to Kin a few weeks ago, and I was jointly kind of doing a similar talk with a guy in a very similar role to me at Unilever, and we both spoke quite openly about our own journeys, similar solutions, in fact the same solution in some cases. They've gone about it in a different way to us, and there were, even that day, there were approaches that we're taking and assumptions that we've made, because it is very natural to make assumptions in these cases. And one word from my peer at Unilever completely reversed the assumption that I got, because I'd seen another big FMCG company who'd approached it in a completely different way and seen a way to bring it to life. I think the other big reflection that we're having is around, I've mentioned it already, but the operating model. You talk about nimbility. And I've heard that word before, but the ability of being agile and quick and able to deliver more quickly. I think there's a general assumption, again, across the industry and across the narrative that AI will mean fewer people to do the work. What we're actually finding is that you need expertise to maintain and kind of operate the AI in the background as well. We've created new job roles in the last 4 months that didn't exist before. I don't think there are any other people in the industry who do these roles, but very specifically focused on staying on top of that evolving capability. That is a skill. And I think there will be a whole new range of skills and capabilities, roles really, maybe even in future university degrees. I believe that is already something that's been rolled out. So, stuff again that is really cutting edge, and that until you're actually running it yourself and you've got scaled usage, you can't predict what's going to come. And so it's exciting, anxiety-inducing, but exciting in equal balance, I would say.
Resource savings and cost efficiencies and things like that, but there's still going to be those heads. And I mean, if you look at what I'd consider kind of the talent arms race at the minute, particularly in America and the Bay Area, between the likes of Google and OpenAI for these specialist people that are going to be their differentiator. I can imagine that the cost saving element probably isn't going to be there for a lot of companies. So it's a different world. And I think, in terms of the nimbility piece there that we spoke about, coming back to the whole kind of center of today's conversation around community, I think there's obviously a requirement for agility in terms of, tech stacks, solutions, ways of reporting and analytics and things like that. But I think there's an agility in state of mind and learning that actually, for good reasons, there's a lot of downward pressure I see at CPGs and retailers from the board to get leaders like yourself more out into events like this to, as you say, that Unilever example, learn fast, see what the industry is doing, collaborate with other, non-compete partners, and, I guess coming on to kind of the next part of our conversation really, what are you seeing in the space with that, and what's your kind of view as to the future of community for people like yourself?
Well, I think we can talk about it and maybe go back and forth, because I could spend an hour responding to that point. I think, look, for big companies, naturally, there is always a level of being cautious of selling the secret sauce in the public world, particularly for brands, businesses the size of Diageo. Whilst we are a company that takes pride in showcasing our work to the rest of the world. Obviously, we have big attendance and representation at the Cannes Festival every year. It's very much something that, as a business, we have a culture of celebrating, and that's existed for a long time, and that's great. I think if we do feel like we're cutting edge in a certain area, we do have to manage our messaging around revealing too much that other businesses, maybe even smaller, more agile businesses, because we are a beast of an organisation, can take and run with more quickly and implement, and then maybe take a step ahead of us. We do want to continue to lead the game. But you are also right. I think certainly something that my broader leadership group is always very keen to see is examples of what other big peers are doing. Again, it helps them with the validity as well. I think I'd probably just pivot as well on your point to something that I think has been a really strong reflection, because you are right, the pressure is downward from board of directors, C-suite leaders. AI is here, we want to lead, go and get it and go and give it to us and go and bring it in. Again, because we've been at the coalface of this piece for such a long time now, actually, and what the community helps with as well is the ability to educate upwards and almost kind of manage upwards as well, because these C-suite leaders cannot be in the day-to-day operation of these solutions, and there is so much granular capability tracking and ongoing evolution that we need that AI can bring, and with it constantly changing. In any business, when you're presenting and you're in steercos with your leadership teams, you maybe get 2 or 3 of them a year. You can't expect them, obviously, to stay on top of the day-to-day evolution, and they might have an assumption from 6 months ago about the strategy to build this capability, whereas the reality is that in 6 months a hell of a lot can change, and again, mainly for the good, but we may also hit critical roadblocks which might limit our expectations in certain areas. So I think kind of tying the 2 points that I've made together, being able to support your internal conversations with those leadership teams to say, we are unlocking this, and we are, I guess, kind of looking at this challenge. And again, we know it's a challenge that our other big peers are experiencing, or actually our peers are going ahead of us, and this is why, and this is the level of agility or the unlocks that are needed at a leadership level to actually allow us to drive value through this solution. Around the actual methodology of tracking the efficiencies and measuring the efficiencies that AI can bring can be challenging. Again, there's no blueprint for it. We have our own internal methods for attempting to realize the value AI is bringing. Again, speaking about the content transformation specifically, that has been, I have heard from other peers the approaches that they're taking. And that has been incredibly illuminating for us, and it's allowed me to have really direct conversations with the leadership team about this is going to need a big unlock and a big cultural change across the business, which they can unlock for us. I can't do it by myself. So yeah, that validity from the peer group, tied into everything that I've said already, gives you the confidence and the conviction that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings me to another point, and candidly, no pun intended, we obviously work with the bread and butter of our clients still is, the solution providers, and it's the solution providers that almost without exception, I would say, have got questions around their go-to-market approach. And, not to cast aspersions on anyone, my role prior to this was for a big SaaS company. I've been there, within that space for over a decade. I think we spoke about playbooks before. I think there's been a accepted playbook within the B2B space to try and start conversations in a meaningful way with the CPG and retail leaders like yourself. There's just a real sense of apathy, I think, with the people they're trying to target and the approaches they're taking. And I know I've laughed a few times with you and others in the past around, blocking people on LinkedIn that are hammering you. And I think what you just described is the emergence of people like yourself and their desire to learn and hear from, things that are cutting edge in the market. Because, some of the people we talk to, solution providers, our very clients, have got some of the most amazing technology.
Absolutely.
But they're just not able to get into the right conversation to actually have a meaningful conversation. Their reliance on these pretty junior sales folk just bombarding people with emails and LinkedIn is just, for me, that is a bygone era, and you must get it firsthand, so I'd love to hear your experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's actually something I've been very, I say passionate, because I'm not passionate about it, but very interested in for a number of years. So I've never been vendor or agency side, I've always been client side.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're right. I mean, look, candidly, in the last 18 months, I've had phone calls on my personal phone when I've been lying on a beach. I've had phone calls on my personal phone when I've been at funerals. I have had phone calls when I've been having dinner with my partner on a Saturday night, from vendors, cold, out of the blue. There's no other way of saying that I'm never going to work with those vendors or partners ever again. That's just the phone calls. I mean, you're talking 50 LinkedIn messages a week. I lose track of how many emails. But as frustrating and kind of intrusive as that is, you make a really good point that ultimately we do have gaps in our capabilities, and we are looking for solutions that are out there to fill them. And if I was on the other side of the fence, which I never have been, but I empathise with those people, they're the opportunities when you want to strike, And it's there isn't a blueprint, again, for the right way to do that. I mean, there's effective targeting, although I think for most of the stuff that I see advertised on LinkedIn, I don't know if that's necessarily being used correctly by vendors, because the majority of what I see is not applicable to me in my role, might be applicable to my company broadly. And what is the sweet spot, I think? it's a challenge. I think there's an opportunity there, a gap in the market almost for the sweet spot of brands who are in the market or clients who are in the market for a specific capability based on their transformation journey, and vendors, to your point, who are absolutely onto a winner with a really hot solution to meet in the middle in a natural environment. And I think it's win-win for everybody. You know, I think what businesses like Diageo, and I know this applies to all of the other big FMCG companies, is if you are looking for a solution, it's sometimes very easy to just work with your existing broader technology vendors and just see if they've got anything off the shelf that can help you. Sure, that happens a lot. I always try not to allow that to happen on my work streams, but also we have, you know, technical procurement teams who would go out and deliver an RFI or an RFP brief based on our needs. Are they always going into the kind of nooks and crannies of the smaller, scrappier startup businesses who probably do an equally good job versus the big tech vendors and at a much more competitive price, and they'll be more committed and they'll put their best people on it. So there is this, I think we have definitely reached a kind of a fork in the road where there's an opportunity for new ways, a new natural, ways in which neither side are wasting their time to have these conversations and facilitate these. And I think it's a very, very valid conversation to have.
I think, you know, one of the things that we talk a lot about internally is, I still think there's this very much this kind of view of like, right, this is the B2B tactic, and, you know, the B2B channels are email and LinkedIn, and oh my God, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been behind the curtain on some of these LinkedIn targeted campaigns. You know, there's a product team going, oh, these are our personas, then you've got a content team and a design, and by the time it's come to life, it's so disjointed. It's like people are spending tens, hundreds of thousands, you know, over a quarter on these paid ads that I would imagine 60-70% of them are not relevant. 95% of CPGs are not in market at any one time for a specific solution. So suddenly you're thinking, what is the ROI on these things? So, you know, I think we try and focus it more on B2P, which is, you know, business to person, or, you know, persona, and that for me is kind of that blending of those two areas, you know, the B2B and the B2C. And I think it is a fantastic opportunity now, and that is, you know, these very conversations really is what led to the, you know, our redefined focus. You know, we were already very community centric.
Yes.
But also just in terms of like, you know, if we judged ourselves as the KPIs, meaningful conversations for our clients, the solution providers, you know, it was just night and day between, you know, spend on things like, you know, paid advertising, which I'm not saying is wrong, but it has to be supplemented with, you know, these more immersive experiences with the community, because that is ultimately what their targets want to do and how they want to learn. So, you know, that was a large part of why we created the Kyn Collective, which is our, you know, community area, and rebranded Medium to the Kyn Agency. And, you know, very pleased to have you kind of helping us in kind of a, you know, giving us a perspective from the CPG, and super happy to have you here today with us at Candid Commerce. Yeah,
I appreciate it, and I think we've talked before. I used the word therapy,
yes,
which I've referred to already, about the kind of the validation and the confidence and what have you. But I think you're right. You know, I think again, all kind of melding into one conversation. But one of the most compelling things that a vendor, I mean, I'm always a big believer that the most powerful form of marketing still to this day is the oldest one, which is word of mouth.
Yes.
Proper advocacy and validation from the horse's mouth, from people that you trust, from people like yourself. And I think, and I see this with some of our vendors already, to be fair, but I think having other peers tell the story of your solution is a far more effective way of selling the solution versus it coming from your own scripted off the shelf. I mean, it's the classic, it's kind of become a bit of a joke in the industry about the first 10 slides of a sell-in deck being the creds. There's always the slide with all of the logos on them.
Yeah.
I've actually been presented solutions before that have Diageo's logo on them by solutions who don't work with Diageo. So for what that's worth. And there's a reason why that comes at the start of the deck, because these solutions know, these people know that you're going to build trust as a result of other big clients having used the solution and them understanding how to work with a big client as well, because it's not easy, right? A big company like Diageo is a client, lots of stakeholders, again, lots of legacy approaches, in some cases, like all businesses, bureaucracy. Knowing that someone who's coming in through the door is going to be able to work with a beast of an organisation is really, really powerful. And I think what you guys are onto here is the more natural, tangible and powerful evolution of that initial creds deck. You know, the people are in the room, get them to tell your story on behalf of yourselves, and I think let's see how it goes. I think you're onto something there for sure.
Thinking about where people are actually having those open conversations, and it's, you know, Discord channels, it's, you know, WhatsApp groups and things like that. And I think, as you say, it's that kind of true validation. It's people that you trust and know, and I think particularly for the big enterprises, I mean, where I was before was digital shelf, as you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talk about the post-2020 tech regret. I don't think anyone's ever bought a shelf solution and gone, yes, that was a great solution. And
I've been there, yeah.
There's a lot of regret, a lot of remorse, and people are so apprehensive. Like the amount of people I know that are like, I'm literally getting asked now to, in fact, I've got an intro to make to you because someone is evaluating a shelf solution and wants other people, you know, this is where I think the industry is going. It's, you know, it's more community driven, it's peer driven. People actually, they don't just want to see a creds deck, they want to know who else has used it. Is there an ability to globally scale this? And anyway, look, I think we should probably wrap it there, as I've actually got to prep for the day for Candid Commerce.
Of course.
But thank you again for coming on, and yeah, looking forward to the rest of the day.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. That was great, Rob.